Hey guys. In today's video I bring you a testimony that is simply impactful and full of revelations from heaven. Let's meet Rebecca Sanders, a young American mother who died suddenly after an electric shock in her kitchen. But what happened to her after that will leave you in shock. She was taken to heaven, saw God's 4 secret books, heard Jesus crying, and came back with an urgent message about the eternal destiny of each of us. So leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications, and comment below which city you are watching this video in. Let's spread this message as much as possible. Now take a deep breath, because this journey will change everything inside you. My name is Rebecca Sanders. I'm 28 years old. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I have always been an ordinary woman. Wife, mother, born Christian. I went to church, prayed, read the Bible, but deep down I thought everything was fine. That I still had time to truly give myself, to do more for God. But time is over. It was a Sunday. The sun came through the kitchen windows. My son played in the living room and I prepared lunch. Everything was fine, until one of the stove burners stuck. When I went to fix it, I touched a bare wire. I just felt an incredible pain in my chest, as if my heart had been crushed. My body shook and suddenly, everything went black. I had died, but my soul didn't stay there. It was like being pulled out of myself. I floated. I saw my body on the ground, my son's face standing still, looking at me without understanding anything. And then, as in the blink of an eye, I was taken. It was as if a force was driving me upwards, at a speed that was impossible to explain. Suddenly I opened my eyes, but I was no longer on earth. I was in a place that cannot be described in human words. A corridor made of living light. It was gold, but it changed color as I breathed. The floor seemed to be made of solid smoke, and deep inside, there was a figure approaching. A presence so strong, so sweet that my entire spirit bowed. That's when I heard my name. Rebecca's daughter, the time has come. It was him. Jesus. I couldn't see his face completely. It was as if a very strong light was preventing me from looking directly. But I knew it was him. The sound of his voice invaded everything inside me. It was as if every part of my soul cried out, "It is the Savior." He extended his hand, and I felt a heat that went through me. My spirit knelt before him, without me even deciding. It was automatic, as if my entire being recognized the majesty. It was then that he spoke. "You were called to see the books." I trembled. I looked around and noticed a door opening. Behind her, a white, circular room full of light inside it, books. Books floating in the air, hundreds, thousands. Some glowed, others cried. Others burned without being consumed. Jesus looked at me with eyes that seemed to penetrate everything and said, "These books know everything about you." At that moment, one of them floated towards me, and when it opened, what I saw inside changed everything. When the book opened before me, it was as if heaven itself had stopped to watch. The pages moved on their own, sliding slowly, as if each sheet carried the weight of an eternity. The book was large, heavy, covered in a golden cover with my name written in letters that seemed to be made of fire and light at the same time. I looked at it and couldn't really understand it. Each page was filled with words, dates, places, actions. Things I remembered, things I had forgotten, things I thought no one would ever know. Jesus approached and pointed to one of the pages. "These are your choices." My heart sank. On that page, I recorded all the times I knew what was right, but decided to do the wrong thing. Little things, a harsh word with my husband, an arrogant thought in the middle of worship. That prayer promise I made and never kept. It was all there. All. But what shocked me most was that each action came with a color. Blue, red, golden, and I didn't know what that meant, so I asked in a weak voice, almost a whisper, "Sir, why are those words in red?" He looked at me deeply and replied, "These are the acts that hurt, the ones that shed blood, that hurt the heart of God." My eyes filled with tears. On that page there was a day that I wanted to forget, a day when I lost control with my son. He was small. He was only 2 years old, and I, tired, impatient, screamed. I pulled his arm tightly. He cried, and I cried afterwards alone in the room. I asked for forgiveness. I thought that was in the past, but it was there, written, registered. And Jesus said to me, "Anything that is done to one of my little ones reaches heaven." On the next page were simple moments, very simple. Like the day I prepared a cake and took it to a sister at church who was sick. A prayer service where I was really tired. A praise sung with my eyes closed, alone in the room, just me and God. These were in golden. Jesus then said, "These are the offerings of the heart. They are gestures that ascend like a sweet aroma." It was there that I began to understand. Every word, every attitude, every silence, everything was recorded. There was no oblivion in heaven. Good and evil were remembered, not as condemnation, but as truth, a truth that no one could hide. Then Jesus touched the book, and a new part opened. There were the 4 books, 4 heavenly volumes that represented my entire spiritual life. He said, "The first is the book of sin. The second, the book of assistance. The third, the book of offerings. And the fourth, the book of first fruits." Each of them began to glow as if alive, and I knew without anyone telling me that what was there was definitive. I don't know how to explain it in earthly word, but those books, all 4 of them, seemed alive. They breathed, they pulsed. And when Jesus pointed to the first, the book of sin, it opened with a sound that sounded like a deep sigh, as if even he suffered for every word inside. The pages were divided by dates like a celestial diary. There were things I remembered and many I wanted to forget. Words spoken on impulse, silent judgments I made in my heart, little hidden sins that I thought no one would ever know about. They were all there. In red were actions that hurt others. In blue, the things that the world finds normal, but that sadden the Spirit of God. Empty parties, songs that took God out of the center, words that came out of my mouth without edifying. Everything was registered. Jesus did not condemn me, in situ. No time. But his gaze passed through me. It was as if love and truth walked together in the same look. He told me, "You asked for forgiveness, and forgiveness was granted, but heaven remembers. So you never forget where it was taken from." Then the second book opened, the assistance book. This one took me by surprise. There were registered every time that I participated in the services. The meetings, the moments when I was late, the days when I went without even wanting to, and until the days I stayed at home, with excuses that even I didn't believe. It was all written, my every word in services, every group prayer. Until the first time I accepted Jesus, I was there. In this book there was something that broke me inside, a section written in golden letters, bigger than all the others. There was a Sunday service on a day I almost didn't go. I was sad, tired, feeling empty, but I went. I arrived and sat at the back of the church. That day, a sister next door saw me crying and decided not to leave without praying with me. She prayed. I cried, and God touched me. Jesus looked at me and said, "That day the whole sky moved because of a silent prayer, and it is recorded here." Then the third book opened, the book of offerings. There they were every time I gave something to the house of God. Coins, notes, food, a blouse I donated, all. Even the values were written down, and more than that, the intention from my heart when delivering. On one of the pages there was an offer that I grudgingly gave. and next to it the phrase she gave, but it wasn't with love. It destroyed me inside, because I realized that God doesn't just look at the act. He reads the heart behind him. And then, the fourth book, the book of first fruits. When it opened, I shivered, because this one, Lauren, was different. It glowed like molten gold. In it were all the first fruits that I offered to God. The first time I preached, the first time I sang in the choir, the first morning of prayer I did alone. It was all there. Every seed, every start. Jesus said to me, "It is in this book that the construction of your house in heaven begins." And in that moment, I saw it. In the distance, appearing. On the horizon, my heavenly home, and what I saw left me speechless. When Jesus said that the first fruits were the first bricks of our eternal home, I looked around and saw something forming on the horizon. It was a city, but not like the ones we have here. Each house glowed with a different light. Some were small, others looked like castles. And in the middle of it all, there was the Mai. She wasn't ready. It was a house under construction. The walls were half finished. The roof did not yet exist. There was scaffolding made of light and angels working silently, carefully placing pieces into place. Jesus walked with me there. Every step he took made the ground beneath our feet shine like liquid crystal. When we stopped in front of the entrance, he looked at me seriously and said, "This is your home, daughter. Everything you build on earth with faith, love, and dedication appears here." I stood still looking. It was beautiful, even incomplete, but at the same time, it embarrassed me, because I understood, without him having to explain it to me, that all that was missing was because of me. There was a lack of prayer. There was no fasting. There was a lack of praise on difficult days. Each of these spiritual practices was like a brick, a detail of divine architecture. The roof, Jesus explained to me, represents the words that come out of our mouths. If we live complaining, murmuring, criticizing, the roof never closes. He said, its roof is still being shaped. It is made of praise and gratitude. At that moment, I saw an entire wall made up of moments when I kept silent for love. You know those times when I wanted to respond, argue, retort, but I chose silence. They were there, forming a strong, stable wall. On the other side, there was a part that was still empty, with nothing. Jesus touched that space with his hand and said, "These are the days you stopped praying, the nights you preferred your cell phone to the word, the services you went to but didn't take me with you." At that moment, I started crying. I thought I served God. I thought it was enough. But now I saw there was so much more I could have done. And then, he showed me something that brought me to my knees. Inside the house, on an altar made of crystal, were the 4 books, a golden chalice, and a piece of land. A piece of land. Jesus said, "This land is yours. This is where you must live forever. But there is something you must see, something few have the courage to face." I looked at him with a heavy heart. Are you ready to see what happens to those who don't build anything? Before I could respond, my spirit began to be taken to a place that chilled me to the core. When Jesus asked if I was ready to see the fate of those who build nothing, I hesitated. My heart accelerated. It was as if my soul already knew where we were going. We walked in silence. I followed behind him, but the light around me began to change. Before it was golden. Now everything around us was turning gray. Then dark. The air became heavy. The ground seemed to breathe. And when we stepped, I heard murmurs, muffled cries, far away screams, sounds that entered the ears and hurt the heart. Jesus stopped. Before us was a kind of valley, deep, dark, endless. And in that place, a door. It was not a door made of wood or iron. It was made of what looked like solid smoke, surrounded by living currents. And from behind her came a sound that I will never forget. Shouting. Regrets. People crying. Begging. This, Jesus said, is the place of those who refuse to build. I felt such a tightness in my chest that I had to support myself. He continued. Here are those who heard Mom but did not obey, those who knew but despised, those who had time but sold it to the world. And then he said something that broke my heart. Rebecca, you know some of these voices. At that moment, the world spun around me. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to see. But he showed. Mimero, among those voices I recognized one. It was my uncle, now my mother's brother. I remembered when she cried for him in the early morning prayers. He always said it was too early to serve God, that one day he would, that God would understand. But the day never came, and now he was there. It appeared before us amidst the smoke. The eyes burned. The skin was marked as if it had been corroded by tears. He saw me and cried. He cried like a child who lost everything. Rebecca, are you alive? Please, tell my family. Tell my children. Tell them not to come here. The pain in his voice was unbearable. He was completely devoid of pride, of reason, of any resistance. There was only pain and regret. Jesus then stretched out his hand, and my uncle screamed as if his soul was being ripped out of him, but there was no release. The hand of Jesus just showed. He could no longer reach rescue. This place was prepared for the devil and his angels, but many choose to come here, he said. Not because I want to, but because they reject me, because they prefer darkness to light. And at that moment, I really started crying. Because for the first time, I understood the weight of choice, and it was there in front of that living door made of darkness that Jesus looked at me and said, "You still have time, but there is something you need to see before you go back." After that moment before the gate of hell, I thought nothing could shake me anymore, but Jesus told me there was still something reserved only for those he chooses to show. He then made a gesture with his hand, and two angels appeared beside us. They didn't say anything. They just looked at me seriously and held out their hands. When I touched them, my spiritual body was elevated once again. We flew, that's the only word I can use, through columns of light that curved in the air, as if the sky itself were moving to give us passage. We arrived at a room, but it wasn't just any room. It was a room viva. The walls were made of books, stacked to infinity, each with its own shine, each murmuring prayers, names, dates, phrases, chants. It was as if each book had a soul. In the center of the room was a table. In it, a single open book, and something that took my breath away. My name, it was written on it. But not just the name. There was something impossible there. A whole page. Blank. I looked at the angels. They remained silent, but their faces were serious, almost sad. My heart raced. I approached the book, trying to understand, trying to remember if this was a mistake, a failure, and then, out of nowhere, I heard the voice of Jesus, even without seeing him there. "This is the page you never wrote." My legs gave way. I fell to my knees. "This was the delivery I asked you for, and you postponed it. It was the ministry I entrusted to you, but you were afraid. It was the prayer I placed in your heart, but you exchanged it for distraction. This page was yours." And then he asked me, "Do you want to go back and write this page?" I couldn't respond with words. I just cried. And as my tears fell, something extraordinary happened. The drops that touched the floor of the room rose. They rose and turned into letters of light, as if the sky was accepting my repentance in real time. Jesus said, "Earth's time is still open, but not for long. There are thousands, millions with blank pages. and each of them represents a story that can still be written. I looked back at the book and saw something even more shocking. On one of the shelves, there was a book with your name. Yes, you are listening to my story now. Jesus showed me that everyone has a book and many are locked away, waiting to be opened with acts of faith. The room began to go out. The angels took me again, and I understood that something was about to happen, something that would mark my soul forever. Jesus was waiting for me again, but this time with a crown in one of his hands. When I returned from that heavenly room, with the angels, my spirit was still shaken. The image of the blank page never left my mind. I felt an urgency inside me, as if time was running out and something big was about to happen. Jesus was there, waiting for me. He was smiling. But it was a smile mixed with pain. Pain of those who love deeply but see their children lost, distracted, too busy with things that have no eternal value. And in his hands was a crown. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. It was not made of ordinary gold. It was made of something that seemed alive, like light condensed into metal. There were small stones that pulsed like miniature hearts, and each of them shone with a name. I asked, "Sir, is this crown mine?" He shook his head slightly and replied, "Not yet, but it could be." I was silent. My heart sank. This is the crown of those who win, of those who write their pages with tears, with renunciation, with true faith, of those who refuse to live by appearances, of those who don't forget what really matters. He approached, placed the crown before me and said, "It is already being shaped with your choices, but the main thing is still missing. Your total surrender." I didn't know what to say. I wanted so much to deserve that crown, but I knew it was still far away. Jesus then bent down to me. His face, even though it was still covered by the intense light, it was closer than ever. He said, "You need to go back." My heart broke. "Lord, I don't want to go back. I want to stay here with you." But he placed his hand on my shoulder and spoke with a firmness full of love. "You need to go. Because there are people waiting for your testimony, because there are other crowns waiting to be shaped, and because time is running out." It was then that around me dozens of other crowns began to appear, crowns in different stages, some complete, shining like the sun. Others cracked, some still just as the base and starting. And Jesus said, "These are the crowns of my people. Some are being stolen, exchanged, forgotten." I felt like his every word burned into my spirit. It was impossible to remain indifferent to that. It was impossible to hear that voice and not want to live completely for him. Jesus then reached out and placed the crown on my head for a brief moment. And when that touched my soul, I saw images passing before my eyes, faces of people, faces that I would still meet, people who would listen to this testimony, people who also had a blank page. He took off the crown and said, "Now you know. Now you are responsible." And in that instant, the surrounding sky began to change. The light flickered like a rising dawn. I felt like something was about to end, or maybe really begin. Jesus looked me in the eyes and said, "Before you go back, there's one last place you need to see, the field of the saved." When Jesus spoke about the field of the saved, I felt something change in the environment. It was as if a gentle breeze had crossed the sky, carrying with it a peace so deep, so real that not even the most beautiful moment on earth could compare. We followed a path of white light, which opened up before our feet. In the distance, I could already see it. An immense, endless field, covered in flowers that seemed to be made of liquid light, colors that don't exist here, aromas that spoke to the soul. It was as if each flower told a story, stories of faith, of battles won, of people who served God until the end. And there they were, thousands, millions, smiling young faces, full of sparkle in their eyes, people I've never seen but who when they looked at me smiled as if they'd known me forever. And in a suit, they knew him. Because in heaven there is no strangeness among the saved. There is perfect communion. Jesus then said, "Here are those who loved me until the end, those who even through tears did not give up, who chose me every day, even when everything said no. Here they rest." As we walked through the field, a figure in the distance caught my eye. A woman, her face full of peace, holding a bouquet of sparkling flowers. And I recognized it. It was my grandmother, my mother's mother. She had left when I was still a teenager, and now, there in front of me, she looked like a 20-year-old girl, beautiful, strong, radiant. She saw me and came running. "Rebecca, you came." We hugged, and in that touch, all the pain, doubts, and longings in my life disappeared. She told me, "It was worth it. Every prayer, every renunciation, every night I knelt alone while you slept, it was all worth it. Tell everyone on earth that heaven is real, that Jesus is real, and that no one should live as if this were just a dream." I cried. For the first time, I cried in heaven, but they were tears of joy, tears of those who found what they were always looking for. Jesus then called me again. "Rebecca, now you need to see Igoros what few can bear. What happens when the sky becomes sad?" I didn't understand. How could heaven be saddened? He looked at me with eyes full of glory and compassion and said, "My people have forgotten me. They no longer worship me as before. They no longer seek me. They no longer call me." And it was there, among the most beautiful flowers in the sky, that I saw something I never imagined I would see. Jesus kneeling and crying. Nothing prepared me for that moment. In the midst of the heavenly field, among eternal flowers and saved faces, Jesus, the King of Glory, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Holy of Holies, knelt down, and it started to cry. It wasn't a discreet cry. It was not symbolic. It was a deep, true cry, with sobs that ripped through the silence of the sky. He bowed his head. His shoulders shook. His tears fell on the heavenly soil, and where they fell, the flowers closed, as if they were also crying with him. I knelt down together without thinking. That scene was too holy to watch standing up. And he said, "My people sing, but they don't worship me. They pray, but they don't listen to me. They go to services, but their hearts are far away. They exchange eternity for distractions. They forget that I died to give them life." Jesus' words did not just come to the ears. They entered the soul. Each one cut, healed, revealed. He continued, "I weep for every house in heaven that stands still, unfinished. For every book that is sealed, waiting to be written. I weep for every abandoned crown, for every page torn by sin." And then, lifting his face with tears still flowing, he looked at me with an intensity that no human being could bear, if it weren't for grace, and said, "You saw it. Now, you can't keep quiet anymore." I babbled, "Sir, what do you want me to do?" And he replied, "Come back, testify, scream if you must, show that there is still time, that the heavens are still open, that the blank pages can still be filled, that salvation is still real, and so is hell." At that moment, angels appeared around Jesus. They sang, but it was no ordinary melody. It was like a summons, an urgent call to heaven and earth. And each note seemed to say, "Time is running out." Jesus then stood up. His clothes were wet with his own tears, but his eyes burned with fire. He said, "The time of mercy is still alive, but soon the time of justice will come." My spirit felt a force being activated within me. It was as if I was being marked from within with a mission that surpassed my own existence. I knew, when I returned, my life would never be the same. He then touched the center of my chest with one finger and said, "I will seal the memory within you. No one can convince you that this was a dream." And at that touch, I felt like I was about to come back. But before leaving, Jesus looked into my eyes one last time and said, "You still have one last mission here in heaven. You need to see who is waiting for you." When Jesus said that someone was waiting for me, my heart skipped a beat. I didn't know what was coming, but something inside me was already crying even before I saw it. The light around us began to change. The sky seemed to open even more, as if it was taking us to an even more intimate, more sacred part. And then, I saw it. 2 boys, running towards me. They smiled. They had eyes like mine. And before I understood, Jesus said, "These are the children who went before you." I fell to my knees, because in that instant I understood. I had lost 2 babies, one in the first trimester of pregnancy, and another who was born dead. I only carried them for a short time, but they always lived in my heart. And there, they were, alive, strong, beautiful, as if heaven had created the best version of each person. They grew up here, Jesus said, in my presence. They were cared for by angels, fed with praise, loved with everlasting love. They came close to me and hugged me. The oldest put his hand on my face and said, "Mommy, we waited for you." I couldn't hold back the tears. Everything in me fell apart in that hug. It was the reunion I never imagined I would experience in my lifetime. And at that moment, Jesus said, "In heaven, no one is forgotten. No tear falls without purpose, no child of mine is ignored." My spirit was at peace, a type of peace that does not exist on earth. I didn't want to leave there. I didn't want to leave my children. But I knew that was just a preview, a glimpse, a reminder of what's to come. Jesus looked at me then with infinite tenderness and said, "Now the time has come." My heart sank. My children smiled, waving their hands, and little by little everything began to disappear before my eyes. The flowers, the lights, the singing of angels, the eternal fields. Everything dissolved in a haze of love and longing, until I saw my body. Ice cream, fallen on the kitchen floor. And then, 2 figures appeared. They were the angels, the same ones who took me to the book room. They reached down, touched my chest, and a light came out of their hands, entering me. Felt a shock, a breath, a force pulling my spirit back urgently, and then suddenly, I breathed. My eyes opened. I was back, weak, trembling, but live. My family ran to me, screaming, crying. My son hugged me so tight that I thought I would never let him go. And there, lying on the floor of my own kitchen, I could only repeat one sentence. Books. Books know everything. Since that day, my life has never been the same. And if I'm here now, telling you all this, it's because Jesus sent me back with a single mission, warn you. The pages of your book are still being written. You can still choose. Heaven is real. Hell too. But eternity, oh, eternity is right there, closer than we imagine. If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.